Hey, welcome back. This is Dragnus here with Dragnus Reviews. Today we're going to go over Pi-hole. For those of you who are not familiar, Pi-hole is a networking wide ad blocking software / hardware support. I say this because it does depend on how you're going to utilize it. Going into this, I'm utilizing this in my own way, which is using hypervisor running Raspbian with desktop. I did this because first off, in order to run in a VM, you have to have x86 support, and I didn't have a Raspberry Pi to utilize in this. Future, I do plan to upgrade to using a Raspberry Pi to have a physical device instead of a virtual machine, but right now it's working, and why mess with something that's working, right? So, to kind of look at this differently, if you would like to utilize this one, as I said, you can go ahead and purchase a Raspberry Pi. There's multiple versions, from everything ranging from the Raspberry Pi Zero to the Raspberry Pi 4. Depending on your price point and cost and requirements, that option's purely up to you. I went with an option that I already have because I have the resource, so I went with a virtual machine. For me, this was a low cost viability, and I'll kind of hop into it here. As you can see, I have a hypervisor virtual machine running Raspbian Pi, or Raspbian desktop, and I have Pi-hole installed. What's nice about this is the hardware requirements are extremely low. You can run this on a Raspberry Pi Zero, which is minimum specs of 1 core and 512 meg RAM. Right now I'm running this with 1.5 gig of RAM, 1 core, and it's the CPU usage is about 3 to 5% at any given time. To me, that is almost overkill. So anything else at this point that's beyond that spec would just be, I don't know, not worth it unless I was going to expand that particular virtual machine to utilize different functions such as file storage or what have you. So let's kind of go back here. So installing Pi-hole is pretty simplistic. You can use it Docker to install if you're going to use Debian or Linux distribution. It's a little bit different, but some people like to use Dockers. I went with Raspbian just because I like quick installations, and it was just simple. So if we go back here and kind of look at it, here's the installation page, so you can see all the different files you could download if you want to do it manually. I chose to use their one-step automatic install, which uses curl and pashing or piping to bash, which some people will say is controversial because it prevents you from reading the code, and people don't like that. But they do give you the other methods to download and run it manually. So whichever option you like to choose, that is purely up to you. So some of the features of Pi-hole, of course, is DNS management. It does have a built-in DHCP module, so if you would like to utilize that to hand out DHCP to all your devices, you could do so. Whitelisting, blacklisting, and of course, logging. Currently supported systems, and if I didn't already say, is Ubuntu, Debian, Fedora, and CentOS. Now I tend to... This was a learning project for me. I was inspired by another YouTuber, kind of showed the process a little bit, and it inspired me to want to go ahead and try to install and see how I could utilize it and if it was something easy to work with. Now, I'll start with my likes so far with this is setup is easy. You can literally have this up and running in about 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how fast the VM or your OS installs. Now, there is some post setup depending on how you would like to utilize Pi-hole. If you want to use it on a system per system basis, it's set up right out of the box to do so. Or if you would like to implement this into your entire network without having to change your DNS settings per system, you will be required to modify your gateway or / modem settings. Maintenance is, of course, pretty simple. The VM I have running takes almost no usage, so an occasional reboot will maintain the VM. However, in the interest of Pi-hole itself, Updating is really simple. As you can see here on the screen, we can go to update gravity, which is the list of block domains. You can hit update, and this process takes about anywhere between 30 seconds and 1 minute. I've never seen 1 minute, but I can imagine if there's actually information to download and updates, it could take a little bit longer. As you can see here, we've already went through all the different sources and it is uploaded or updated. Now you can actually see these settings by going to settings, block list, and here are the 6 gravities that I have installed currently. These are URL tracking nodes that you can use to add. There are more out there, you'll just have to kind of go ahead and Google search them. Again, as I noted, one of the other things that I like about this is the interface. I am a GUI interface raccoon. If it's pretty, I like it. This one had a pretty decent interface right out of the box, and no configuration was required. You have graphs of different types: pie graph, donut graphs. You can see top block domains, top permitted domain list, and you can even see your different clients and who's doing it as who is your outliers essentially. Ironically, no surprise there, one of my phones is the top outlier. That means every app you're using, every website you're going to, it's blocking and stopping apps galore. Now, if you're curious on how this does this, you can Google search it, but essentially that your apps and devices that you go to send out a ad request to specific addresses. For this instance, if you go down here, you can see data.plugentries.com as well. Now what this would do is this would use an identifier to send back that information, everything from links and ads back to the device, either a Android application or a web page, and from there it would display that information. So if you were recently searching up puppies on Google, it would essentially show you those kind of things in search entry, so you might see different things. Right, so continuing off from where I last was, now that you kind of have a gist of how these ads are implemented and placed, the one thing you may notice is a very slight increase in bandwidth. It won't be super dramatic, but since you're not consistently downloading data in the background to fill up, such as cached images and videos and links, we'll see obviously a slight reduction in that. The interface is obviously, again, something I do like because it does give you a lot of data information, including query logs, where you can go back and see all the different things from what's been allowed, what's been blocked. So if you're interested in looking up that historical data, it will retain that over time. You do also have whitelist and blacklist functions. So if there's something that you would want to whitelist to always see, or blacklist something you just are tired of noticing and seeing all the time, you do have that option. You can disable, just kind of like antivirus, you can disable ad blocking for 10, 30 seconds, few minutes, or even a custom time. So if there is something you're curious on checking or looking into, you will be able to do that as an option. There are tools for audit logging, tracking, and even debugging if you're trying to come up with your own list. And of course, there's definitely network information that you can see, including what's on your network and what is being, what is using Pi-hole essentially. And of course, went over this once before already, but one of my favorite, or one of my likes for this, of course, is the fact that it's a low cost implementation. Whether you're going to go with a physical device such as a Raspberry Pi, you can get a cheap Raspberry Pi Zero with a kit for about $35, up to a Raspberry Pi 4 full kit for about $90 to $110. Now, if you're looking for a dedicated device that does not use very much power consumption, is something you can play around with or utilize for something else later, that is a great option. However, again, if you are able to do so and you have that resource, running it in a virtual machine is viable and does work, so therefore it could be essentially even lower cost because you're already utilizing hardware you already have. Now, then I kind of went over the things I did not like, or that I did like about Pi-hole. A few things that I'd like to put on my dislike list for a couple of reasons. First off, installation may not be simple for every person out there that's ever is considering this. If you've never worked with a Linux machine before or a Mac or anything like that, I wouldn't even say Mac actually, because this is just more Linux based. This may not be a super simple solution for you. However, if you are inclined or curious about learning it, it's definitely an easy process to follow. If you do follow it step by step, I can almost guarantee that you will be able to run it. But you may be curious about some of how this stuff works, and I would definitely urge you to go onto some websites and Google just about them a little bit more to get familiar. Of course, one thing that may not be an option for everybody else is running the system in a VM, especially if you're not used to running VMs. You don't have a dedicated hardware that you want to keep on, it may not be a good option for you. In that case, you will need to purchase another device or a Raspberry Pi or something to run this on your hardware or on your network. And the last thing I'd like to point out for this also is if you are not comfortable with modifying your router or modem, this may not be a great option for you. However, if your modem by your ISP or if you have one that you purchased does support changing DNS to its own, it's very simple to go through. Just kind of look it up, make sure you do your research, and document your current settings in case you need to revert back to anything. Overall, I think Pi-hole is a great project to implement into your network. Box ads, gives you data on what's going on, which is much insight, especially if you're a data person. A quick and easy project just to learn if you want to use Linux in different ways, especially if you're looking for a Raspberry Pi project. And if you're just trying to try something new. Well, there you have it. That is my review and 2 cents about Raspberry Pi, but Pi-hole. If you like this video, please let me know in the comments down below. Again, please like and subscribe if you're looking for more information and future updates. Thank you, and see you next time.